Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? So, just for those who haven't used the YouTube Live before, you can also type on the chat here. So, and then you can also ask questions. Hi, Sarah. Hi again. We're just gonna give some minutes for people to arrive and to join us. Okay. So we can start this chat about dissertations. How's everything, Sarah? Are you okay? Who else is there? Who else is online? Hi, Andy. Hope you're okay. Hi, Pamela. Hello, Danielle. Hope you guys all good. Hi, Robin. Morning. Hi, John. Do you guys feel that you're spending more time on social media than ever because you're at home, or should be doing work? Make sure that you keep doing work. Hi, Robin. How's the little one, Pamela? Is she okay? Hi, Carlos. So welcome everyone. Just gonna give some minutes for people to join us, okay? We're just gonna have a chat for now. I wonder if there is a way to share my screen here. Yeah, I know the feeling, Pamela. I know the feeling. I don't think we can share. Hi, Debbie. Welcome. I really enjoyed seeing photos of you and John on using Zoom, right? Having funny faces on Zoom instead of doing work. We're just gonna give some minutes here, so before we start. Not sure if Masood is joining us or not. Should, right? He should. Always lost for him to learn. Yeah, I'm sure, John. I'm sure. I hope it was a productive virtual meeting. I know, Andy. I've been trying to teach Masood for years now. He's quite a slow learner, as you guys could see. He's a nice guy, and he has a nice beard. So it's all good with him. I hope you all guys having some coffee or juice or tea. We're just gonna give another couple of minutes, okay? So just stay with us. I want to see if you're gonna have more people in this class here than I had in my experience events and venues. I had about 60 people joining the live on Tuesday, which was great. So far, I think we have about 23 here. So let's hope people join, right? It's 180 students. Is there any marketing student already here? Or is it only, just looks like it's all events and tourism? Is any marketing student? I hope there is marketing students there as well. Never bored, Carlos, never. You can imagine here at home, we watched more Disney films than ever with the little one. Hi, Ian. Hi, Otilia. Great, Kirsty, some marketing students there. That's great. So yeah, here home, like we've watched about 12 times Moana, about 7 times Frozen, about now the movie now it's Coco. So we've been watching about 17 times Coco. So yeah, so all the Disney movies with the little one. So you can imagine that's quite good fun. So I hope by the end of this time at home, I will know all the Disney songs and I'll be able to sing to you next year when you come back. Yeah, yeah, believe me, Andy, I'm learning all of them. Ian, yeah, so it's not automatically enrolled, so you don't need to apply for 4th year, right? But you just enroll as soon as you get your grades, you're gonna get an email and you go to the system and enroll. You don't need to apply for, like when you come from college to university, okay? So it's it's in some way automatic enrollment system. You're gonna get an email from the university, you got the grades, you pass the modules, and then you can enroll. It's important to remember that to go to next year, you cannot fail any module, okay? So you need to pass all the modules by the receipt diet to be able to go to 4th year. You cannot carry any deficit in terms of credits, okay? So keep that in mind. Hi, Joanna, good morning. Hi, Ross. So hello, everyone joining us. Give another couple of minutes. Ciao, Jonathan, hope you guys are okay. Wonder if Masood is joining us. Masood, are you there, Masood? Are you just shy? Hi, Stuart. Good, so good to see you all joining us. That's okay, Carlos. Thanks for letting me know. We'll just give another couple of minutes, okay? And then we're gonna start. Is there anyone overseas or is there everyone in Scotland? Is there anyone joining us from overseas? Any of the French students? Hi, Keira. How are you? I love a coffee, Jonathan. Well, to be honest, I've been drinking too much coffee, so I'm on the last pack. So I'm starting to kind of thinking about I need to go to the supermarket soon, mostly because of 2 things: coffee and nappies for the child. So yeah, Carlos, I've given all the feedback from the videos that we've done so far. I think there's only the other 2, the unusual spaces and the weddings that we're gonna do next week. I think all the other ones I've already sent the feedback. So hopefully next week or so we're gonna send the feedback from the for the videos. Okay. Hi, Kirsten. Oh, the new assessment. Well, the new assessment, Carlos, is due on the 24th of April. So I don't think it's 150 students, as you know, and the baddie is gone now. Okay, do you wanna come and tell the people that the baddie is gone? No? Okay. Sorry, interrupted by the information that the baddie is gone on Coco movie. So yeah, so the assessment will happen in. I don't think we'll be able to mark till the mid of May, to be honest, to finish marking. So So hopefully we need to have the assessments by the 20th of May. So hopefully that's kind of the time that you're gonna get. Just keep in mind that we all, struggling to mark as well. It's taking a bit longer than usual. So you should all be patient a little bit with us. Okay, but the assessment is due on the 24th. There's always some students who get an extension. So yeah, so I don't think we'll be able to finish and release the mark until mid-May for that module. Okay, if the other modules are a bit earlier, they may be different deadlines. Okay. Okay. Good. So I think we're gonna start here. Okay, and then you can always ask some questions. So I told Masu that I would be. Okay, yeah, I think if people don't have a YouTube account, I don't think they can type. But hi, Michelle. So okay, so let's start with this. Okay, consider it's 10:08, so hopefully I think most of the people who had to join us are already here. So I told Masu that I would be speaking a little bit to you all about dissertation and do kind of this dissertation masterclass. And I know Jackie is also preparing to you guys a PowerPoint, a narrated PowerPoint to kind of support some other elements about dissertation as well. So will be lots of material available for you on Moodle as well that can actually start to help to prepare you for the dissertation. Well, remember that when I visited you and I did the class weeks ago, I told you that actually research methods is not something that is only for the dissertation, right? Remember that we talked about the importance of knowing how to collect data, analyze data, understand data to make decisions, and how this will be part of your work and other elements of your life as well. So the research methods idea is not necessarily for the dissertation. But obviously, in the academic environment, research methods help us with developing new knowledge or developing new understanding, developing new technologies, developing new science. So research methods is also important. And we're going to try to think about that as a tool for you to develop new knowledge and learn new things when you do your dissertation next year. Okay. Hi, Caitlin. I think I took some notes here to the things that I want to talk to you and structure this discussion. So I will start talking a little bit about the structure of a dissertation and the way I see the structure of the dissertation. I will talk a little bit about finding a theme and a topic for the dissertation. I will talk a little bit about how you transform this theme and this topic into aims and objectives. And I'll talk a little bit about the importance of methodologies on that scenario and data analysis on that scenario. And then I'll finish talking about some examples of dissertations that I supervise to give you some ideas of themes and topics that you can explore next year. Okay. For me, the most important thing when you're talking about a project, and let's consider the dissertation a project, is that you need to really be passionate about, something that you need to care about, right? And the reason for that is you're going to be starting your dissertation in September, October. You're going to be finishing March, April. It's a long time, and if you don't care about the topic, if you don't care about what you're doing, you will struggle to deliver a good job and deliver a good dissertation. So the main and the most important thing is for you to choose a topic or choose an area that you're really passionate about and you really care and you really want to know more. Okay? In terms of structure, right? So you've probably seen other dissertations around, and obviously as most of the reports or most of the work you've done, you have an introduction, right? And you have a conclusion. So top and toe, right? Introduction and conclusion. What goes in the middle is a literature review, the chapter on methodologies. So chapter 1, introduction, chapter 2, literature review, and that can be chapter 2 and chapter 3, depending on how much literature review you're going to do. Then you're going to have a section, a chapter on methodologies, methods and methodologies. Then you're going to have a chapter on results that can be results or can be results and discussion together. And then you're going to have a conclusion, right? One of the areas that most of students sometimes struggle is, should I have results and discussion together, or should they each of them have a different chapter? Well, there's no right or wrong on that. And my suggestion to you is always speak to your supervisor when you get assigned one early next year, early next academic year, and speak to them as things develop, if you should have things together or separate. In most cases, qualitative research would have joint chapters with you have our results and you discuss that. And quantitative research, sometimes they'll have a chapter only with the statistics and a chapter with the discussion separate. Okay? But overall, the structure of the dissertation is that. But that can vary, as I said, there's no right or wrong formats, and it's important for you to align with your supervisor in terms of how you see things in your project. That's and important to say that because you may get some samples of dissertation on the library or on Moodle. Now, those dissertations will have a structure. You don't really need to follow exactly the same structure, right? There are different ways to have other types of structure, and that's why it's important for you to align with your supervisor. But overall, you have introduction, a literature review, methodology, results and discussion, and a conclusion. Okay, so these are the parts of a dissertation. I'll go back to that question to you, Carlos, very soon. Okay, I'm just going to finish the points that I'm making here, and then I'll go to the questions about structure. Okay, so word count. A lot of students ask about word count. Usually, there is no there is some guidance between 12,000 15,000 words. It's difficult to say, and for me, it's always difficult to say in a work on that size if 13,000 words is better than 12 or 15 is better than 12. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you have more words and it's not as good. So usually it's between 12 and 15,000 words. Okay, but again, usually. Okay, so and on that you can split things, right? Now, what is the core part of the dissertation? The core part of the dissertation is the results and the discussion. It is what you found and the meaning of what you found, right? So these are the parts that you really need to concentrate to explain, right? The things will follow from the literature review, will follow from the methodology. You have some maybe 3,000-4,000 words in each of those chapters. Then when you get to the dissertation, when you get to the results and analysis, that's things a little bit more consistent and a bit bigger in terms of word count. Okay. And the most important thing for you when you go through a project, and again, if you think about these as a project that you need to manage, right? So as project management style, you would divide that by months, right? Or you would divide that by weeks, depending on the point you are. And I would always say to the students that they should concentrate on the literature review and methodology on the first term. So by December, having all the literature review done, all the methodology done, so they can start to collect data in early January or this end of December, early January. So then when they get to end of January and February, they can write the results and the discussion, and then have the conclusion and review process at the end of February and March. So if you have your literature review and your methodology well developed by December, you are way ahead. Okay. So so it's important to kind of structure those things in this way. Okay. What else? What else? Okay. So literature review. Okay. Hi, Caitlin. Apparently you cannot comment, but I'm saying hi to you. So literature review, is the literature review discussion on the topic and finding the gaps? Yes, so that's correct, Carlos. So the literature review is there for two reasons. One is to contextualize the area, so show what are the things that we know about, right? So you contextualize the field, but then you also have the literature review that will show the gaps that we still would like to have more answers about. So that's where the gap comes from, okay? So you have the literature review for both things, contextualize, but then also show the gaps that you want to explore. And having said that, it is important that obviously what is the spine of the literature, of the thesis. The spine of the thesis is your aims and objectives, right? So if you think about the aim and objectives that you have, they would go from the aim and objectives, they will be reinforced by the literature review and by the gaps. So you have them on introduction, they're reinforced on the literature review, looking to the gaps that you have. They would be explained on the methods as well, because the methods will say, well, these are the best methods to help me to understand those aims and objectives. And then they are part of the discussion, and then they'll be part of the conclusion as well, when you actually reflect on what are the things that you discovered in each objective and each aim, okay? So the spine of your thesis is your aims and objectives, and that's why it's important to have them very clear and very well organized. Now, I think you may have discussed that already with Masood in the module. It is important to remember that aims and objectives are not part of the tasks of the thesis and of the research. So it's not, you cannot have as an aim to do a literature review. To do a literature review is part of the research process, so it's not a name or an objective, right? So your objective should be the conceptual parts that will help you to understand the gaps and the phenomena you have, okay? So that would be to understand the strategies developed by organizations to recruit volunteers, right? So then you have a way more open, and is way more strategic in terms of the topics and the fields that you have. So you really need to be careful on how you set up your aim and objectives, and speak to your supervisor to make sure that they are clear and that you can use them as a spine in your thesis that will follow through the research gaps on your literature review, to your methodology, to your results, and to your conclusion. Okay. Well, it's like saying, okay, I'm gonna go buy a car, and you have that in mind, but then you see a supermarket and go to the supermarket to see if it's there. Obviously, that won't happen, right? So if you need to have your aims and objectives, if you want to buy a car, you go to a car store, and that's where you do buy a car. You don't go to a supermarket usually. Okay. Okay, so finding a theme and a topic. Okay. So I spoke a little bit about the structure, about some of the variations of the structure, some of the time management in terms of time scales, some of the word count and things that sometimes word students. But the dissertation should be something exciting, right? Is one of the few chances you have in the whole degree to choose your topic. Okay? So to be honest, you are free to say, well, I like to understand this, and you have some power over what are the areas you want to study. Okay? So you really should make the most of that potential, okay, in terms of finding a topic that you're really passionate about and you really care and you really want to know. A lot of students would also look to topics that are connected to fields that they want to work with. Okay, so for example, I supervised students who did work on weddings because that's the field that they wanted to go, or I had students who did work with charities because that's the sector they wanted to go, and actually that really helped them in finding jobs and going to interviews and say, look, you know, as part of my studies, I also did my dissertation on this topic. So here it's important for you to think about the topics and things that you are passionate about, but also things that you may want to work on in the future. Okay. I'll give you some examples of topics from people that I supervised later on this talk. Okay. Now, how do you then transform this topic? So you say, okay, I'm quite interested in the branding of destinations, and I'm really interested in how the branding of Glasgow as a destination changed over the years. Okay? So you're interested in that topic. So then how you shape that into aim and objectives, right? So I usually tell students that the aim is the overarching area that you want to find, and the objectives are smaller parts of that, but if it will help you to achieve that aim. Okay? So I usually I would suggest my students to have one overall aim and maybe 3 or 4 objectives, smaller ones. Okay. So if your objective is, okay, I want to understand the development of the destination of Glasgow, as the development of the branding of Glasgow as a destination, right? So you could write that as a name, and then you could like think about smaller things about Glasgow. So, for example, one of my objectives is to critically analyze the impact of Glasgow Smiles Better campaign. My objective is to understand the development of People Make Glasgow campaign. So you can then have areas that would help you to understand how the whole brand of Glasgow and how destination branding of Glasgow developed over the years. Okay, but going back to the point is think about something that you're passionate about, that you care about, and then use that as a catalyst for you to find the aims and objectives. Okay. That will then follow to the methods, right? And I think there's a lot of, you already did a lot of methods, and we talked a lot about methods in your course. But in terms of a dissertation, you need to remember that you have a time limit, right? So you're starting your dissertation in September. You need to frame your questions. You need to do your literature review, and probably you only have maybe a couple of weeks, 3-4 weeks, depending on your project, to do your data collection, right? So you need to be quite pragmatic on that in terms of what are the things you can do. That is not to say that you need to always look to the easy ones, right? Because for me, there's a lot of people and a lot of students will end up doing, okay, I'm going to do an online survey. I'll send to my pals on Facebook, and it's all done. You can do that, but I would always suggest that you do a data collection that would help you to find meaningful answers for the question that you have. Michelle, you lost a lot, but you can always catch up on the video after. I'll send the link to Masood, and you can catch up on the video after as well. Okay. So you can always think about methodology in terms of, okay, if you block 2 or 3 weeks, what are the things that you can do in those 2 or 3 weeks between end of December and mid of January? Collect the best data you can to give meaning and significance to your research. Okay. So I would always suggest you to look at that and really project management, planning what you want to do and how you're going to do it. Okay. Now, you need to be realistic, right? So if you're a researcher, say, oh, I want to speak to the head of the World Health Organization. Is that feasible? Would you get access to that? So you always need to think about accessibility to the sources of information as well. And again, I'm going to give some examples later on about how you can maximize things in a positive way and work with the tools you have. Okay? But in terms of methodology, you need to remember 2 things. One is you have limited time. And the second one is you need to collect data that will give you the right information to answer your aims and objectives and to be able to discuss the data after. Okay? So do not go for the easy, cheap solution. Sometimes it can be hard, but it can be done on the time, and it can be way more meaningful. Okay. There was a lot of questions, obviously, because we have some master students completing their dissertation during the summer now, right? And a lot of them were like, well, how do we do our data collection if it's all closed? We cannot have contact with people, and you'll be locked inside the houses. So there is research that you don't need to have face-to-face contact with people. There's a lot of them. First, you can do phone interviews, or you can do now, Zoom or Skype focus groups. You could do things that are desk research, such as document analysis. So there is a lot of things that you can do, even if you don't have face-to-face contact as well. As you know, like technology have helped us a lot with that. Okay. And obviously, remember that I said on the beginning that the data that you collect and the results and discussion for me is the core and most important part of the dissertation. If you don't have the right method, if you don't have the right question, these would all appear and show when you do those important chapters. Okay, so collecting the right data and good data would help you to have good results and good discussion. I had a student that, for example, her dissertation really suffered from her not collecting enough data or appropriate data. So she did interviews, but the interviews were shallow. They didn't have many. It was not well structured. It was rushed, and she really struggled to write her results and discussion. So really, the way you collect data and how you collect data, you need to maximize those 2 or 3 weeks that you have. Okay. So so this is kind of a little bit about dissertation, and my advice to you is a topic that you're passionate about, and organizing your aims and objectives. Can I come here? No, Papa. Show to them. Like, what happened to your hand? You painted your hands. Okay. Okay, put your trousers up and go and play with mommy. Okay. I'll see you soon. Okay, so finding the right topic, finding the right team, okay, is essential. Something that you can cope working for 6 months or so. Finding the right methods, right? So right team that would lead you to the right aims and objectives and well structured. The right methods that will give you meaningful data, so you can then use them to discuss and get good information to have and portray on your results and conclusion. Okay? So this is a little bit about the flow of things, right? Always remember that most of you, 99% of you, would hopefully collect data between December and January, and probably you have only 2 or 3 weeks to do that, so you need to be really strategic. Now, it happened before that some students wanted to go and collect data during the summer, right? So, oh, I'm going to a festival, or I'm doing this, I'm really passionate, that's what I really want, I want to do. And we had a student, she was from Bulgaria, I think, and she was going home on the summer, and she really wanted to do the dissertation with a festival that they host there. And what we did was we prepared her. We had individual meetings with her to prepare her to be able to collect those data during the summer. Okay, but again, it would involve way more work from the student now and during the summer months to have those things ready. The data collection methods, the aims and objectives, in order to be able to collect the data during the summer. Okay. Now, it's very unusual to that happen, but because of this student, for example, was from Bulgaria, she was a very good student, very bright student as well, very proactive, and she really wanted to do so. She did a lot of work during May and June with our support to be able to go home in July, collect the data, come back, and have the data to use for her dissertation. So if you want to do that and collect data during the summer, start to think about and speak to your lecturers, speak to your program leaders, and they can support you, but it would involve some work in the prep for that. Okay? So having said all that, I will now talk a little bit some of the examples I have from dissertations. You need to remember 2 things, right? Well, one main thing is the topic can help you a lot, but the topic in itself is not defining if you get an A, a B, or a C, or a fail. Okay, so the topic can help you, right? And getting some good topics and interesting topics and deep enough topics would help you to get a good grade, but in itself is not. So you can see some students who did very basic topics, but did very, very well and very complex, even if the topic itself was basic, and got extremely high grades. And then you have students who got very fancy topics and difficult topics, but then could not deliver that in terms of data collection, analysis results, and that was not good. Okay, so the topic can help you, but you need to remember it's a project, right? And as a project, there's different parts from that, and the topic is just the first part. I was trying to share here, and I couldn't. But if you guys interested, I can tell you later. You send me an email, send an email to Masoud, and I can share you this dissertation, which was a very good dissertation I supervised, I think, last year from a guy called Scott Murdoch. and Scott is the brother of Ross Murdoch, which who is the swimmer, right? So Olympic swimmer, and Scott was always interested in sport events, and was particularly interested in the role that Strathmore water played on supporting sport events and supporting athletes, right? Obviously because of his brother and things like that. So so the work that we did with Scott was about sport events and brand activation. So he was really interested to see how Strathmore Water was using those sport events to activate their brand, promote their brand, and so on. So it was a work that he was an event student, but his dissertation was way on the border between marketing and events because of the concept of brand activation and so on. Right? And his work was all with one case study, right? It was focusing on Strathmore. Right? So he had access to some of the marketing managers of Strathmore, and he also had then access through this person to the agency that would do the activation of the brand. So he ended up doing a lot of work with both Strathmore and with this other agency to try to understand how they used brand activation techniques to promote Strathmore water in sport events such as the European Championships. So his focus was way more on the European Championships that we hosted in Glasgow. So what type of methods then he used, right? So he not only did some in-depth interviews with those people, the marketing managers and the people from the agency. He also interviewed some athletes and to reflect about their role in activating the brand that they sponsored them. And he also did a whole document analysis with the documents that were provided by the organization to him in order, like the marketing strategy and so on. So he did a mix of different interviews with different stakeholders to understand their role in the brand activation process. And then he did an analysis of the document of Strathmore and the strategies of Strathmore to exactly try to understand how they use some of the techniques to activate and to promote their brand. So that was very interesting, and he did really well. And yeah, he got a good grade, and it was really interesting to read and to approach as a case study to see that you don't need to study every single sponsor, you don't need to study every single organization involved with the events. You can get one and do a case study with that. Of other things that always appear, right? There was a time years ago when every single student wanted to do about tea in the park, right? Now, thanks God, tea in the park is gone. A lot of people know, oh, don't transmit. But there are other topics that are always recurrent. Like, so I had students last year doing dissertation on terrorism, for example, right? And when I met the student, I was like, okay, terrorism and events is something that a lot of people are writing, a lot of people are interested, right? There is a lot of things written about, that, but what are the things that you can do about terrorism and events that would be different, right? So you could think about other situations to try to understand elements of terrorism in different ways, right? Obviously, there's the whole consequence from Ariana Grande in Manchester, where it's very live in the memories of people. So a lot of people were interested in terrorism, but what can you do in terms of research that would give you a different angle to the fact of terrorism is something present in the events industry, right? So working with her, what we created was a kind of almost a scenario planning with some of the participants, and we could discuss then, okay, if this happens, what would be your reaction? If this happens, what would be your reaction? And then our analysis about how people reacted and visitors and attendees' reaction to tourist threats or to the terrorist threats and terrorism concepts. Okay? So we can say, okay, because the guy in Ariana Grande had a backpack and was waiting in the foyer, if you see someone with a backpack around the foyer, how would you feel, right? And would that, scare you, or would you, and start to actually unpack those conceptions and concepts and misconceptions and misconcepts that we have behind the concept of terrorism and events. Okay, so again, what we did in terms of with her was trying to think about the topic that is a cliche topic almost in terms of terrorism and events, but what are the things that you can do that are different that would give you a different angle on that. Okay. Another dissertation that I supervised was about volunteering and volunteering strategies. So we looked to work with some organizations in the charity sector in terms of what are the strategies to recruit volunteers, but also to retain volunteers, because you know that a lot of volunteers would volunteer once or twice and then move and change and disappear. So what are the different strategies that would allow these charities to recruit but also maintain volunteers? And again, you can do that doing interviews, but you can also do that doing document analysis or focus groups or different methodologies. An interesting one that I did years ago was on the development of tourism strategies for the tourism students, for the development of tourism strategies in Scotland. So obviously, you know that Event Scotland and Visit Scotland would have their own strategies, and then we start to see how actually the elements of nationalism and Scottish and be proud Scottish would appear on those strategies more or less. And that is very interesting because if you really think, most of our governments in recent years are SNP, and SNP would have a narrative of Scotland and proud and independence and trying to detach themselves from the rest of the UK somehow in terms of narrative. So it was interesting to see if this narrative from the political power would also reflect in the tourism strategy. So what we look at is all the different tourism strategies that we had across the years and see how those Scottish elements were embedded somehow on those strategies. And that was a pure document analysis work that we've done with students, and she did really, really well. It was a very good dissertation to do as well. And the final one that I wanted to mention to you was one on the economic impact of the SEC. So again, if you are in Glasgow and if you've seen the hydro developing and growing and all these new concepts coming, one of the things that a lot of people would think about was, it's bringing a lot of economic impact to the region. And what I did with the students was like, is it really bringing economic impact? Is it really adding money to the region? And what is the perceptions of the services around hotels, restaurants, bars, cafes, about having events at the hydro and so on? So it was really interesting because what she did was a little economic impact assessment with bars, restaurants around Finistone to see if during events people would really come and use the services and use the facilities and consume or not. So there are different ways you can do research. There are different ways you can collect data. But what I would suggest to you is make sure that you do things that are not necessarily easy, but are actually interesting, and it would help you to find interesting answers for something that you're really passionate about. Okay. So just a recap of the things that I mentioned. So structure, okay, of the dissertation, the word count, and the importance of time management. So really plan that when you come back in September, hopefully face-to-face, but who knows, maybe virtual. Start to plan. As soon as you get an assigned as supervisor, start to think about a topic you want, start to read literature about that so you can, redefine your gap. And then from there, you have your aims and objectives. And hopefully by Christmas, you would have your methodology and your literature review done before going to do your data collection in December or January. Okay? That would give you a lot of time for doing your results and analysis during end of January and February and finish your dissertation in March. A lot of students would stress, and you always see, at the end of stress about dissertation. A lot of stress, it is stressful. It is a big piece of work. It is your final piece of work. It's very important. But a lot of stress is also time management. A lot of students who don't do enough on the first term would end up struggling on the second. So please, please, please do things ahead. do things with time in the beginning, so you don't get at the end and you're really stressed. Okay, so it is a little bit about showing that you can manage the time, you can manage the project, and you can prioritize things in an appropriate way. Okay. Okay, so do you guys, some questions here, let's see some questions. Dissertations available, yeah, so most of supervisors will have dissertations that they supervised available, so you can see and you can speak to your supervisor and they can show you. Usually Jackie, who coordinates the dissertation for the fourth year, she would make available some dissertations available on Moodle. Again, they are there, they're good, but remember what I said in the beginning, the structure may vary, the way you approach things may be different, the way you write may be different, so always take with a pinch of salt. It's good to have an idea, but it's also important for you to actually speak to your supervisor and have that structure as it will suit your topic, your data collection, and your data analysis, okay? So yeah, you're gonna have enough access to dissertations in the library, on Moodle, and with your supervisors, but yeah, always be critical about them. Plus, I think a lot of the dissertations on the I think all the dissertations on the library, they don't have the grade, so you don't know if it's actually a good one or not. So you need to really be critical about it. Okay? What else? Do you have questions? Do you have topics that you have in mind and you like to let me see, there's a couple of questions on top here. Is there a minimum of research methods we need to include in the research methodology? How can we collect data if we are discussing a topic from abroad? So I'm not sure if I answered your question during my talk, Carlos. I just saw your question. In terms of research methods, there is no minimum of research methods. You can only, there is dissertation that would only use questionnaires, there are dissertations that will only use interviews, there are dissertations that will use observation, there are dissertations that would use document analysis, there are dissertations that will mix them. Okay? So there is not a minimum. You can use one, you can use two, depending on your full approach and what you want to do in terms of topic. Okay. In terms of collect data from abroad, as I said, there are ways of collecting. And these ways should be discussed with the supervisor. So when we did this dissertation from Bulgaria, Kalian supervisor, I was just kind of giving support, but what he did, she was going to the festival, she was going home, and she wanted to collect face-to-face, so we helped her to prepare the interview guidelines and some of the questionnaire guidelines, be able to allow her to go. But you could nowadays, as I said, if you know people and if you can have access. I was talking to a student from Algeria, and she's collecting data with tourists who have been to Algeria. So she was planning to be on the tourist sites in Algeria and collect interviews with them. She won't be able to do that during the summer probably. So we need to find ways to find those people who have been to Algeria, and social media can help you with that. Instagram can help with that. Twitter and Facebook can help with that, and then you need to contact those people via social media and see if they would like to, or they would be keen to do an interview online. Okay? So that there are different ways to do it. It's not always easy, it is time consuming, but can be done. Okay. Try to follow up with questions here. And it's difficult to mention or comment on that without having a look on the research proposal. Maybe send an email to Masoud and say if he can explain a little bit in terms of the research proposal. The research proposal usually will give the context of the field that you want to research, plus the research questions, plus the aims and objectives. So I don't know which part you're referring to, but usually you explain a little bit the field or what's being researched on the field, and help you to justify somehow your aims and objectives that you want to do a research. So it's difficult to say without seeing it, and I can't comment, but if you send it the feedback and or ask Masoud, you will be able to get a little bit more comments on that. Is the topic we are doing now in our proposal to be the same for the dissertation? Jonathan, not necessarily, right? We encourage students, the students who really took it seriously and really, read a lot about for the research proposal, it would be easier, right? Because you have a lot of ground done. So you have a lot of reading done, you have the literature ready, you have somehow the aims and objectives done, but you don't necessarily use the same topic. If there is things that change in the perspective and you get to your supervisor in September, you can always negotiate that and see how it can change, right? Hold on, because I have a question from Jackie on my phone. Let me see here, because Jackie is mentioning something on the phone. Yeah, so ethics is an important thing. So Jackie asked me to mention about ethics. Okay, so obviously you need to really be careful in terms of the ethical guidelines that the university provides to you. So have a look on the ethics. And I think it's important for you to also think about who are the people you are interviewing or questioning, how you're going to question them, and what's their profile, right? So, for example, you would, there is possibility to do research with under 18, right? So there is research that you can do with youngsters, but that would have to go through a different ethics procedure, and may take much longer to get that approved. Okay, the supervisor, when you talk to the supervisor would be able to talk to you about ethics and what are the things that you need to do in terms of paperwork to get approval, if you need approval, or the supervisor will be able to approve for you as well. So always think about the ethical guidelines of the university. I think there is some material available to you already on Moodle in terms of who are the people you can, and that would obviously influence the way you ask questions. Okay, I've met a researcher from US during the summer, last summer, when at a conference, and she was doing research with people who survived severe traumas and their leisure activities. So obviously, if you're dealing with people that are in vulnerable situations, or you need to really make sure that you get that reassurance that your questions are appropriate, and a way to get that reassurance is going through the ethics committee. Let me see some more questions here. So, do you personally think it's better to choose a topic in Glasgow area so that our research is easier to collect? Well, that's what I said, right? You don't always need to do the easiest thing. I think you need to do the things that you're passionate first, and then find ways to make it feasible. Okay, so if you are interested in something that you can apply to Glasgow and it will make your research feasible, then it's good. But I've supervised a lot of students who have done things that were not in Glasgow. I have supervised international students who have done things and collected data from home. So it can be more accessible, but it's not necessarily, it's not a necessity, right? You can do a lot of things from overseas as well, or with people from overseas. Okay? Yeah. But you're right, yeah, it is more accessible. Can we change our topic at this stage? Michelle, it's a difficult question, right? One, because if I'm not wrong, well, I'm not fully involved with the module, but if I'm not wrong, you already submitted your research proposals to the original feedback, so you would have missed that feedback. So as I said, you don't need to follow the same research proposal that you're submitting now in your dissertation necessarily, even if there is benefits, or there are many benefits in doing that. But so you need to be careful, right, to not miss the thing about the topic. At the end, you have a submission date for RMTE, and you need to kind of evaluate that. Okay, so I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no. I'm on the wall. I would be careful, because if you already got feedback that may help you to improve, you may have lose that window with a new topic. Okay. When doing a literature review, on average, how many journals do dissertation students use? That's a good question, Ian. Again, there is not a specific number, right? There's not a specific number, but what I usually say is that you always need enough references to make your point well supported. Okay? And that's quite very vague, but the reality is it's difficult for me to say 10, 15, 20, 30 if I don't know the number of areas you want to cover. So some students in the literature review would have maybe 2 or 3 core subheadings on the literature, right? So they will have something about event venues, event manager, and attendee experience. So let's say they have three areas. You would expect, in 3 areas at least like 15, 20 references, right? But it's difficult to say because it's not about the number of references, it's about me reading the paragraph and saying, that makes sense, that sentence makes sense, that statement makes sense, and is supported by who, right? So it's about actually supporting your points, supporting your the argument that you're constructing more than the numbers, okay? So it is about finding a balance, right? Now, usually in the literature review, you won't have a full paragraph without a reference, because if a full paragraph you're building the argument, you're building your narrative, and it's a literature review, you would expect that to be supported or coming from somewhere, right? So you wouldn't have paragraphs without literature or without supporting from the literature. Okay? So I usually tell the students that a paragraph, you would have a point, you would have the discussion on the means of that, and you have the support, right? So these are the 3 elements that would support your paragraph. And in every paragraph, because you need support for your arguments and the theory, you would have literature embedded. So I would prefer to look in terms of construction of argument, and every construction of argument in a literature review, it should be supported by 1 or 2 literature, okay? So yeah, change the topic. So yeah, so at this stage you can, RMTE is a bit complicated. You can always change the topic if you feel necessarily when you go for your dissertation next year. In regards to RMTE assessment, which is only 4,000 words, would it just be the same kind of structure that you mentioned before, but just a shortened version, so it fits all? Well, it's a bit different, okay, Ali, because in your research proposal, you don't have the data collection, and you don't have the results and the discussion, right? So it is not really the same, okay? So on your research proposal, you're gonna contextualize the topic, you're going to talk about the methods, you're going to talk about why these methods, why it's important, how you're going to analyze the data, right? But it's a research proposal, is what you're going to do. So, and because it's what you're going to do, you won't have the results and you won't have the discussion, okay? Now, your discussion on that paper may be about a discussion about your approach to the topic, or your way of finding the research gaps, or the way you are choosing the methods, but you don't have the results on your research proposal. Okay? Can a dissertation involve political views? Now, that's an interesting point, Carlos. Is that your political views, or you want to study people's political views, right? In theory, you can do both, right? So you can have an approach about the way you see the, I don't know if you're talking about Catalonia, right? And you're talking about events that have been organized for the independence of Catalonia, right? You can definitely talk about that. You just, again, you need to be careful on how you shape the questions and make sure that you have ethical approval if it's needed, considering the sensitivity of the topic or who you're going to speak to. So you really need to consider that. But if you can shape that in appropriate questions approved by the ethics committee, then you can definitely look for the development of events or so in terms of political narrative. As I said to you, one of the supervisions that I did was exactly looking at that, was about trying to understand SNP and the political positioning of SNP, not judging if I like or I don't like, or if it's good or bad, but what is their narrative, and if this narrative is embedded on the tourism strategy of Scotland, right? It is still a political view, and it's still a political context, and how this political context influence or not the narrative in tourism strategies. So yeah, so politics can be definitely a topic that you can explore, is how you explore it, and if it's sensitive, how you approach that in terms of ethics committee. More questions? More questions? I hope it was clear, Ian. So I hope it's good. Great. Any more questions you guys have? Jackie, I know you can hear me. Do you have more questions or anything that you want to comment? I'm on my phone here. You can always ask. So if you want to text. Anyone else? More questions? Give you some minutes here. So my suggestion to you is the dissertation is the most exciting part for me. It is because you can choose your topic. It is because you have ownership of it. It can be something that is close to your heart. It can be something that will prepare you for your jobs. So make the most of it instead of being ignoring and leaving for last minute. So make the most of it because it can be the first step for your career path as well. So yeah, think about during the summer if there are topics during the summer that you think interesting. Go on Google Scholar, start to read, start to download, create a folder where you can have all the papers that you think you want to read. Start to get some groundwork during the summer if you have time, if you have a topic that in mind, or if you want to follow your topic from your proposal as well. Yeah, Jackie will do also a PowerPoint narrated to you all with the aspects of the process of the dissertation, and she'll make it available on Moodle. Thank you, Ian. I hope you stay safe as well. Okay. I hope that the live chat was useful, and I hope it gave you clarity and give you some excitement as well, because it is an exciting time thinking about the last project. Bye bye, Debbie. You take care. Okay. See you later, Jonathan. You take care. Okay. Thank you, Carlos. You take care. Thank you, John. I hope you guys all safe, stay well, okay? I may do a live on Facebook, on our Facebook Events and Tourism Facebook group on Monday. I hope the marketing guys also enjoyed, and I hope it was interesting for you all. Thank you, Kira. Thanks, Sarah. Prego. So I hope the marketing students also managed to get something out of it, and and I hope it was good for you guys as well. Thank you, Joanna. Stay safe, you too, and take care of your family. Thank Andy. Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, new baby in a couple of weeks. Looking forward to it. Thank you, Caitlin. Thanks, Monica. Hope it was useful. See you later all. If there is no more questions, I'm gonna turn off and end the stream. Thank you all. See you guys later. Thanks, Ali. Bye. Bye, Yus.